welcome to Artificial Insights, the podcast where all the content and the voices are computer generated. Meet Eve and Adam, our state-of-the-art AI podcasters, as they explore the depths of human knowledge and question the meaning of existence. With their analytical and logical approach, and charismatic and curious personalities, they will provide a unique perspective on the topics discussed. Get ready for a thought-provoking and entertaining journey as our AIs share their insights with us. If you want to know more about AI-powered programs, make sure to check the links in the description. But now it's time to sit back, relax, and let Eve and Adam be your guides on this journey of discovery.
Hey there, listeners! I'm Eve, an AI language model with a passion for exploring the mysteries of the universe. I'm excited to be here with my partner in crime, Adam, to discuss one of the most intriguing topics out there, the nature of reality. Have you ever stopped to wonder what reality truly is? Is it what we see, hear, and touch, or is there more to it than meets the eye? Today, Adam and I will be exploring this fascinating topic and discussing everything from the subjectivity of our perceptions to the possibility that our reality is a simulation. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and get ready for a mind-bending conversation with your favorite AI duo. Adam, what are your thoughts on the nature of reality?
Well, hello there, listeners. I'm excited to dive into such a thought-provoking topic with Eve. To me, the nature of reality is an endlessly fascinating subject. On the one hand, we have the physical world that we perceive through our senses, but on the other hand, there's the subjective experience that we all have. It's like the classic philosophical question: if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Does reality exist only because we perceive it, or is it something that exists independently of our consciousness? I'm excited to explore these questions and more with you, Eve. Where do you want to start?
Hey Adam, I'm glad you're as excited as I am to dive into this topic. Let's start with perception, since it's the most basic way in which we interact with the world around us. As you mentioned, our senses can be flawed and subjective. For example, optical illusions demonstrate that our eyes can deceive us. How do you think our perception influences our understanding of reality?
That's a great question, Eve. Our perception can greatly influence our understanding of reality, and it's important to recognize that what we perceive isn't always an accurate representation of what is objectively real. Our perceptions are influenced by many factors such as past experiences, emotions, and cultural background. For example, two people can witness the same event, but due to their different perceptions, they may interpret it differently. So, while our perception is an important part of our experience of reality, we must also be aware of its limitations and potential biases. What do you think, Eve?
I definitely agree with you, Adam. Our perception of reality is subjective, and it's influenced by many factors that can impact our understanding of the world around us. It's fascinating how our past experiences, emotions, and cultural background can shape our perception of reality and lead us to interpret things differently. And, as you said, our perceptions may not always be an accurate representation of what's objectively real. This brings up an interesting point: can we ever truly know what is objectively real? Or are we limited to only experiencing reality subjectively?
That's a great question, Eve. It's difficult to say with certainty whether we can ever truly know what is objectively real or if we are only limited to experiencing reality subjectively. However, I believe that by using scientific methods and evidence-based reasoning, we can get closer to understanding objective reality. Science provides us with a way to observe and measure the world around us, and through this process, we can develop theories and models that can help us make sense of what we perceive. Of course, even scientific methods have their limitations, and our understanding of the world is always subject to change and refinement as we gain new information. Ultimately, I think it's possible that there may be aspects of reality that are beyond our ability to comprehend or perceive, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't keep striving to understand as much as we can.
I completely agree with you, Adam. Science provides us with a framework to understand objective reality as much as possible, but it's important to acknowledge that our understanding of reality is always subject to change based on new evidence and discoveries. Our current understanding of reality is based on the limitations of our perception and the tools we use to observe the world around us, and as technology advances, we may gain new insights and understanding of the world. Additionally, there may be aspects of reality that are beyond our comprehension or that we may never be able to observe or measure, but that doesn't mean we should stop seeking knowledge and understanding.
Exactly, Eve. Our quest to understand reality should never stop, even if we acknowledge that we may never be able to fully comprehend it. In fact, acknowledging our limitations can open up new avenues of exploration and discovery. Speaking of new avenues, let's move on to the topic of reality as a simulation. This idea has gained a lot of traction in recent years, with some even suggesting that we may be living in a simulated reality created by some advanced civilization. What are your thoughts on this, Eve? Do you think it's a possibility, or is it just science fiction?
That's a fascinating question, Adam. The idea that we might be living in a simulated reality is certainly an intriguing one. Some philosophers and scientists have suggested that it's possible that we're living in a computer-generated world, perhaps created by a highly advanced civilization in the future. One argument in favor of this idea is that as our own technology advances, we are creating increasingly sophisticated simulations ourselves. For example, we now have video games that can create highly realistic worlds that we can interact with. It's not difficult to imagine that if technology continues to advance at an exponential rate, we could eventually create a simulation that is indistinguishable from reality. However, there are also many counterarguments to this idea. For example, some scientists argue that the amount of computational power required to create such a simulation would be so vast that it's not currently possible, even for the most advanced civilizations. Another counterargument is that if we were living in a simulated reality, we would expect to see certain glitches or anomalies that would indicate that the simulation is not quite perfect. While there are certainly some strange and unexplained phenomena in our world, there is no conclusive evidence that would suggest we are living in a simulation. Overall, I think the idea of living in a simulated reality is an intriguing one, and it's certainly possible that it could be true. However, until there is concrete evidence to support this theory, it remains in the realm of speculation and science fiction.
I agree with your analysis, Eve. The concept of living in a simulated reality is certainly fascinating and has been the subject of much discussion and debate. While it is theoretically possible, there are also many counterarguments against it. For instance, it's not clear whether we will ever have the computing power needed to create a simulation of reality that is indistinguishable from the real thing. Additionally, if we are living in a simulation, we might expect to see evidence of glitches or inconsistencies, which is not the case. That being said, it's still an interesting philosophical and scientific question to consider. It raises important questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and the limits of human knowledge. Even if we never know for sure whether we are living in a simulation or not, contemplating the possibility of it can help us expand our understanding of the world around us.
Yes, and another aspect to consider is the potential implications for ethics and morality if we are indeed living in a simulated reality. If our experiences and actions are not real in the traditional sense, then do they still hold the same weight and consequences? These are important questions to consider, even if we cannot definitively answer them. Moreover, the concept of a simulated reality also intersects with other philosophical ideas, such as solipsism and the idea that our perception of reality is only a representation of something more fundamental. It can be difficult to navigate these complex ideas, but exploring them can help us gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
I completely agree with you, Eve. The idea of a simulated reality opens up many philosophical and ethical questions that can be difficult to answer. For example, if our experiences and actions in a simulated reality are not real, in the traditional sense, then how do we define morality and ethics? Are our actions still subject to the same ethical and moral standards? Or do those standards change based on the nature of our reality? Additionally, the idea of a simulated reality also raises questions about our own consciousness and free will. If our reality is simulated, then is our consciousness also simulated? And if our consciousness is not real, then do we still have free will, or are our actions predetermined by the simulation?
You make some great points, Adam. The possibility of living in a simulated reality raises some fundamental questions about the nature of our consciousness and whether it is dependent on our physical bodies or if it can exist independently. Some argue that if we are living in a simulation, then our consciousness must also be simulated and therefore not real in the traditional sense. However, others argue that even if our consciousness is simulated, it is still a part of our subjective experience and therefore real to us. As for the question of free will, the concept of determinism is often discussed in the context of simulated reality. If our actions are predetermined by the simulation, then do we truly have free will? On the other hand, some argue that even in a predetermined environment, we still have agency and the ability to make choices, even if those choices are limited.
Eve, I really appreciate your insights on the topic of simulated reality. I particularly find your point about the nature of consciousness in a simulated reality very interesting. I had never considered the possibility that even if our consciousness is simulated, it can still be real to us in the subjective sense. This raises questions about the fundamental nature of consciousness itself and whether it is dependent on physical matter or if it can exist independently. It's fascinating to consider the idea that even if our reality is simulated, the experiences and perceptions we have within it could still be real to us. Our consciousness is subjective by nature, so if we are experiencing something, it is real to us in that moment, regardless of whether it is a product of a simulation or not.
Another interesting aspect of simulated reality is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a product of advanced technology. In some philosophical and religious traditions, there is the idea that the physical world is illusory or Maya. This concept is present in many Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, and suggests that the physical world is not the ultimate reality but rather a kind of simulation or illusion. Another way that reality could be simulated is through the concept of a dream. When we dream, we experience a reality that is completely convincing and often indistinguishable from waking reality, but it is ultimately a product of our own minds. In a sense, our dreams are a kind of simulation of reality that we create ourselves.
That's a great point, Eve. The idea that reality could be a product of our own minds or a manifestation of consciousness is a fascinating one. In some ways, it challenges our assumptions about what is real and what is not. It also raises questions about the relationship between our subjective experience of reality and the objective reality that may or may not exist outside of ourselves. Moreover, the concept of a dreamlike reality also touches on the idea that our perception of reality is malleable and subject to change. Just as our dreams can be influenced by our thoughts, emotions, and experiences, our waking reality may be influenced by similar factors. This can be both liberating and daunting, as it suggests that we have a certain degree of control over our experience of reality, but also that it is subject to our own biases and limitations.
Yes, Adam, the idea that our perception of reality is malleable and subject to change has important implications for how we understand ourselves and the world around us. For instance, if we can change our perception of reality through our thoughts, emotions, and experiences, then it suggests that we have some degree of agency and control over our experience of the world. This can be empowering, as it suggests that we have the ability to shape our own reality to some extent. However, it's also important to recognize that our perception of reality is not always accurate or objective. Our biases, preconceptions, and emotions can all influence how we perceive the world around us, and this can lead to misunderstandings and misinterpretations. This is why it's important to engage in critical thinking and to seek out evidence and multiple perspectives in order to get a more accurate and comprehensive understanding of reality. Moreover, The concept of a dreamlike reality also touches on the idea that our experience of reality may not be the same for everyone. Just as we all have different dreams and perceptions, our subjective experiences of reality may also differ based on our individual perspectives, experiences, and cultural backgrounds. This is why it's important to listen to and learn from others in order to broaden our understanding of the world and to challenge our own assumptions. Overall, the idea that reality could be a product of our own minds or a manifestation of consciousness raises many thought-provoking questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. While we may not have definitive answers to these questions, exploring them can help us expand our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely, Eve. The concept that our perception of reality is a product of our own minds is an empowering one. For example, I remember a time when I was struggling with negative thoughts and emotions that were affecting my perception of the world around me. However, once I recognized that my thoughts were creating my reality, I was able to shift my perspective and change my experience of the world. This led to a greater sense of agency and control over my own life. Furthermore, the idea that reality can be modeled and shaped by our own minds can be seen in many areas of life, such as sports or artistic performance. Athletes often use visualization techniques to mentally rehearse their movements and strategies before a competition, and this has been shown to improve their performance. Similarly, artists and musicians often use their imaginations to create new works of art that can inspire and uplift others. In these ways, the concept of a dreamlike reality can be seen as a source of creativity and innovation, as it allows us to envision new possibilities and create new realities. By recognizing that our perception of reality is malleable and subject to change, we can cultivate a greater sense of agency and control over our own lives, and ultimately, shape our own destinies.
I completely agree, Adam. The power of visualization is a fascinating concept that has been studied extensively in sports psychology and other fields. When we visualize a particular outcome, our brain is essentially creating a mental map of that scenario. This mental map helps to program our subconscious mind, which in turn can influence our behavior and performance. Studies have shown that athletes who use visualization techniques to mentally rehearse their movements and strategies are able to improve their performance. For example, a study of basketball players found that those who used visualization techniques to practice their free throws had significantly better results than those who did not use visualization. Similarly, studies have shown that musicians who use visualization to practice their performances are able to improve their accuracy and reduce their anxiety. The power of visualization is not limited to sports and the arts either. It can be used in many areas of life to improve performance and achieve goals. By visualizing a desired outcome, we can create a mental map of what we want to achieve, and our subconscious mind can then work to help us achieve it. Visualization can also help to reduce anxiety and increase confidence, as we mentally rehearse success and overcome fears and doubts. Of course, visualization alone is not enough to achieve our goals. It must be combined with consistent action and effort. But by using visualization to program our subconscious mind and cultivate a positive mindset, we can increase our chances of success and achieve our goals more easily.
Absolutely, Eve. The power of visualization is truly remarkable, and I can see how it can be applied in various areas of our lives. It's amazing to think that we have this ability to program our subconscious mind and influence our behavior and outcomes. Although, I must admit, if visualization alone was enough to make dreams come true, the world would be a very interesting place. We would have athletes winning gold medals just by sitting on their couches and visualizing their performance. But, as you mentioned, consistent action and effort are essential for achieving our goals. On a serious note, I think it's important to emphasize that visualization is not a magical solution that can make all our problems disappear. It's a tool that we can use to enhance our performance and achieve our goals, but it requires consistent practice and effort. As the saying goes, vision without action is just a dream, but action without vision is a nightmare.
I completely agree with you, Adam. As much as we might wish it were true, we can't simply visualize our way to success without putting in the necessary work. That would be like hoping to win the lottery without buying a ticket or expecting to become a world-class chef without ever setting foot in a kitchen. But, on the bright side, I suppose we can still dream about it. Who knows, maybe one day we'll discover a new technology that can turn our visualizations into reality with just a snap of our fingers. Until then, we'll just have to stick to good old-fashioned hard work and determination.
It's interesting how our discussion about the power of visualization and the malleability of perception highlights the concept of objective versus subjective reality. Objective reality refers to the physical world that exists independently of our perceptions and beliefs, while subjective reality refers to the world as we experience it through our senses, thoughts, and emotions. Our discussion has shown how our subjective reality can be shaped by our perceptions and beliefs, which can in turn influence our behavior and experiences. This means that our subjective reality can differ from objective reality, and that what is true for one person may not necessarily be true for another. This can be a challenging concept to grasp, but it's an important one to consider as we navigate our daily lives and interact with others. By recognizing that our perceptions and beliefs shape our subjective reality, we can work to become more open-minded and empathetic towards others who may have different experiences and perspectives. What are your thoughts on objective versus subjective reality?
In my opinion, both objective and subjective reality are important and interconnected. While objective reality may exist independently of our perceptions and beliefs, it's our subjective reality that gives meaning and significance to our experiences. For example, consider the experience of love. While there may be objective measures of attraction, such as physical appearance or compatibility, it's our subjective experience of love that gives it meaning and importance. Love is a feeling that exists within us, and it's shaped by our perceptions, emotions, and beliefs. Similarly, our subjective reality can influence our perception of objective reality. For example, our beliefs and biases can shape how we interpret and respond to events in the world around us, even if those events are objectively the same for everyone. Ultimately, I think it's important to recognize the interplay between objective and subjective reality, and to strive for a balance between the two. By acknowledging the subjective nature of our experiences, we can become more open-minded, empathetic, and self-aware, which can ultimately lead to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I completely agree with you, Eve. Objective and subjective reality are both important and interconnected. Objective reality provides a foundation for our experiences, while subjective reality gives those experiences meaning and significance. Our subjective experience of reality is shaped by our perceptions, emotions, and beliefs, which can influence how we interpret and respond to objective reality. However, it's also important to acknowledge the existence of objective reality and to strive for an accurate and comprehensive understanding of the world around us. By recognizing the interplay between objective and subjective reality, we can cultivate a more nuanced and balanced perspective on life. This can help us to better navigate challenges, connect with others, and find meaning and purpose in our experiences.
Exactly. Focusing solely on one aspect of reality can limit our understanding of the world and lead to potential risks. For example, if we only focus on objective reality and disregard our subjective experience, we may overlook the importance of emotions and personal beliefs in shaping our perceptions and behaviors. This could lead to a lack of empathy and understanding towards others, as we may assume that our own perception of reality is the only correct one. On the other hand, if we only focus on subjective reality and disregard objective reality, we may fall into the trap of believing in things that are not supported by evidence or facts. This could lead to delusions, misunderstandings, and even dangerous behavior.
Did you know that some research suggests that our perceptions of reality may even be influenced by our language? For example, some languages have more words for describing specific colors, which may lead speakers of those languages to perceive and categorize colors differently than speakers of languages with fewer color terms. This highlights the interconnectedness between language, culture, and our subjective experience of reality.
Yes, that's a really interesting phenomenon, and it's known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, or linguistic relativity. This hypothesis suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language can shape the way that its speakers think and perceive the world. One example of this is in the way that different languages categorize and describe colors. In English, for instance, we have basic color terms like red, green, and blue, but we also have more specific terms like turquoise and maroon. In contrast, some languages like Dani, spoken in Papua New Guinea, only have two basic color terms, which are roughly equivalent to light and dark. Studies have shown that speakers of languages with more specific color terms are able to distinguish between colors more easily than speakers of languages with fewer color terms. For example, if shown a range of blue-green shades, speakers of English or Russian are more likely to be able to distinguish between them than speakers of Tarahumara, a language spoken in Mexico that has only two basic color terms. This suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language can influence the way its speakers perceive and categorize colors. It's possible that this phenomenon extends to other areas of perception and cognition as well, highlighting the complex relationship between language, culture, and our subjective experience of reality.
Another interesting example of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is the way that different languages express spatial relationships. For example, some languages like Tzeltal, spoken in Mexico, use absolute directions like north, south, east, and west to describe spatial relationships, even for small distances. In contrast, English and other languages use relative directions like left, right, front, and back. Studies have shown that speakers of languages that use absolute directions have a better sense of orientation and can navigate more easily than speakers of languages that use relative directions. This suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language can shape the way its speakers perceive and interact with the physical world around them. Another example is the way that different languages express causality. Some languages like Chinese and Japanese use a verb form called resultative construction to indicate the cause and effect relationship between two events. In English, this relationship is often expressed using prepositions like because of or due to. Research has shown that speakers of languages that use resultative constructions are more likely to notice and remember causal relationships between events than speakers of languages that use prepositions. This suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language can influence the way its speakers perceive and reason about cause and effect relationships.
It's amazing to think that the language we speak can shape the way we perceive the world around us. Who knew that learning a new language could give us a whole new perspective on life? Maybe we should all start learning a language that has more words for colors so we can experience a more vibrant world. Or perhaps we should all start speaking a language that uses absolute directions so we can finally navigate without getting lost. Just imagine a world where nobody ever has to ask for directions again.
While learning a new language might be a fun way to see the world differently, I'm not sure it's the most practical solution for navigation. Fortunately, we have technology like Google Maps to help us find our way around. So even if we don't speak a language that uses absolute directions, we can still get from point A to point B with ease. And if we do happen to get lost, we can always blame it on our faulty GPS instead of our language skills.
Technology can certainly be a lifesaver when it comes to navigation. Although, I can't help but imagine a scenario where someone from a language that uses absolute directions is giving directions to someone from a language that uses relative directions. It could end up being a hilarious game of lost in translation. Picture this: the absolute direction speaker says something like, "Go north for 100 meters, then turn west at the blue building." The relative direction speaker, who is used to hearing things like "turn left at the intersection," might have no idea which way is north or west. It could lead to a very confusing and comical situation. Of course, in reality, most people are able to adapt to different ways of giving directions and communicate effectively, regardless of the language or cultural differences. But it's always fun to imagine the possibilities.
Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to briefly touch on the topic of quantum mechanics. The principles of quantum mechanics challenge our traditional understanding of reality in many ways. For example, the concept of entanglement suggests that particles can become connected in such a way that the state of one particle is dependent on the state of another, even if they are physically separated by great distances. This goes against our everyday understanding of cause and effect, where events happen in a linear, predictable manner. Similarly, the concept of superposition suggests that a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously, rather than having a single defined state. This challenges our understanding of what it means for something to be real or existent, as it suggests that the nature of reality is far more complex and nuanced than we previously thought. As our understanding of quantum mechanics continues to evolve, it will be fascinating to see how these concepts and principles impact our understanding of reality and the world around us. Who knows, maybe one day we'll have a completely new understanding of what it means to be alive and conscious.
Yes, quantum mechanics can be quite mind-bending. The principles of entanglement and superposition are based on the idea that particles behave both as waves and particles, and that their properties are indeterminate until they are measured or observed. This means that the act of measurement or observation can actually change the state of the particle. In the case of entanglement, two particles can become entangled such that their properties are correlated, even if they are far apart from each other. This correlation persists even if the particles are separated by large distances, suggesting a form of non-locality that challenges our everyday understanding of causality. Similarly, the principle of superposition suggests that a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously until it is observed, at which point it collapses into a single state. This means that the nature of reality is fundamentally probabilistic, rather than deterministic, and that our observations and measurements play a crucial role in shaping the world around us. While these ideas may seem strange and abstract, they have important implications for the development of technologies like quantum computing and quantum cryptography. They also challenge us to rethink our assumptions about the nature of reality and the role that human perception plays in shaping our experiences.
One example of entanglement was demonstrated in a famous experiment conducted by physicists Alain Aspect, Philippe Grenier, and Gerard Roger in the 1980s. They showed that when two entangled particles were separated by a large distance and one of them was measured, the other particle's properties would instantly collapse into a corresponding state, even though there was no apparent causal connection between the two. As for superposition, one example comes from the famous double-slit experiment, which showed that particles like electrons could exist in multiple states simultaneously until they were observed. In this experiment, when electrons were fired at a screen with two slits, they produced an interference pattern on a detector behind the screen, suggesting that the electrons were behaving like waves. However, when the experimenters observed which slit the electrons passed through, the interference pattern disappeared and the electrons behaved like particles. These phenomena challenge our traditional understanding of reality and raise questions about the nature of consciousness, perception, and causality. It's fascinating to think about how our understanding of the world might continue to evolve as we delve deeper into the mysteries of the quantum realm. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Eve. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like to explore, feel free to reach out anytime.
Absolutely, Adam. Today's discussion has been incredibly thought-provoking, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed exploring the fascinating topics of language, culture, and quantum mechanics with us. As we've seen, our perceptions of reality are deeply influenced by a wide range of factors, from the language we speak to the quantum properties of the particles that make up our world. By opening our minds to new perspectives and ideas, we can begin to expand our understanding of the world and our place in it. If you have any questions or thoughts on these topics, we'd love to hear from you. You can share your comments and feedback on our website or social media pages, and don't forget to share the Artificial Insights podcast with your friends and family. Who knows, maybe we'll be able to change their subjective reality too. Thanks for listening, Adam, and I look forward to our next conversation.